Hey everyone, it's Captain Oro here, bringing you another video on Pokémon Champions. This time I'm going to be bringing you a video on the Regulation MA meta, with Indianapolis Regional and Turin Regional coming up really soon. I thought this would be a perfect time to take a step back and look at how the Pokémon Champions meta is actually developing right now. Because over the last few weeks we've had a ton of important tournaments. There are some really interesting trends starting to show up across all of them. Some Pokemon are becoming way more common than people actually expected, and certain mega evolutions are starting to separate themselves from the rest of the pack. With this, there are even some strategies that top players are clearly starting to prepare harder for now. So in this video we're going to break down the biggest tournament results, the most successful teams, which Pokemon are actually rising in usage and which ones are falling off, and what all this could mean heading into Indianapolis and Turin. Because at this point in the meta we're starting to move away from early experimentation into a more refined competitive meta, as the Regulation MA finishes on June the 14th. So people are starting to figure out what's actually consistent, what works in long tournament runs, what kind of teams can reliably win in best of 3 sets. So if you're preparing for an upcoming event, riding ladder, building teams, or just trying to keep up with Regulation MA meta, this is definitely a video you'll want to watch, because understanding tournament trends is one way to improve at VGC. It's not just about knowing what's strong, it's about understanding why certain Pokemon are succeeding and what players are preparing for while the meta develops week to week. So let's take a look at how the Pokemon Champions competitive meta has evolved over Regulation MA heading into these 2 regionals. So to start off with, we are going to look at the 2026 Thailand Master Ball League. As I mentioned, over the month of May we've had some really important tournaments, and we've had a lot of Victory Road tournaments. All these tournaments are held on Victory Road's websites. I'm not going to go over all the Victory Road website tournaments, because I think the last one probably has more impact on the regionals coming up than like the first one, but I did want to cover these Master Ball leagues because they are smaller tournaments, but they are official in-person events, and there is something to talk about with these. So in regard to that, so this is about 92 players. Now the interesting thing here is obviously you have your Swiss rounds and then into single elimination, which we're all used to in North American and European regions. However, the thing that we're not used to now is the OTS. It's going to show the nature, so that is something that's rumored to be happening. It hasn't been fully confirmed. However, RK9 now hosts the what they call the stat alignment, which shows the nature, and the new team sheets show that as well. So that's kind of like pretty much confirmed until this weekend, where everybody's going to basically confirm that it is happening. It will be interesting to see how that impacts your match, because knowing you've got an adamant Basculegion versus a Jolly Basculegion could be very interesting as well to kind of figure out, or like an adamant Sneasel versus a Jolly Sneasel. That will be interesting to see how that impacts game plays and game plans. It's not something that we've dealt with before in North America and Europe, but I'm sure it's going to be probably quite helpful for newer players coming into the game. Going down into the tournament results, obviously first of all, congratulations to everyone who won one of these events. They're very hard to win, even to day 2 or top cut them, so congratulations to all the players who managed to do that. First team, a very interesting team, and obviously as I mentioned there was a lot of experimentation at the beginning of the Regulation MA. Obviously this was hosted on the 16th of May, so quite early on in May. Obviously we're near the end of May going into June, so this was quite an interesting one. With this team, it's the this team here. Had it previously opened. You've got the Mega Venusaur, Mega Aerodactyl, Sylveon, Incineroar, Basculegion, Como. Basculegion is like quite a common threat in the meta now. You will see it a lot on the teams. Aerodactyl's around, but it has slightly dropped off, and then Sylveon picked up a little bit. Incineroar is an interesting one because it's completely dropped off, but on this build it kind of makes sense. You've got the Incineroar Como mode where you can kind of fake out Parting Shot to protect the Como or the Venusaur, and then you also have the Sylveon Incineroar mode for when there's a slower matchup, but I can imagine also they're both trained to outspeed certain things in Tailwind alongside Aerodactyl. So you've got quite a nice kind of combination of game plans that you can kind of flick through, and a lot of things that don't have similar weaknesses, so that's quite nice to have. Obviously the ones that I will speak about is obviously Mega Aerodactyl being one of the fastest Pokemon. It is the fastest Pokemon in the meta, I should say, at 222 speed when Jolly Natured trained. Obviously this one's running Rock Slide, Dual Wing Beat, Tailwind and Protect, which is pretty standard for Mega Aerodactyls. You don't tend to see them not run these full moves. It's very rare and on only particular teams that you would run that. With the Venusaur, you have the Earth Power, Sludge Bomb and Giga Drain. I think that's quite solid coverage. You can opt for Leech Seed if you wanted it, but that would have to be on kind of like a bulkier team, maybe with screens where you're kind of trying to outlast the opponent. Mega Venusaur is quite nice because obviously you get Thick Fat, which obviously cuts down the damage on attacks that are usually super effective on that one. That's quite nice for the Venusaur. Alongside that, Incineroar and Aerodactyl covers the Charizard Y quite well. The next team that we're going to cover is the Gengar team, which finished second. Usually with Mega Gengar, with the Shadow tag, you would expect to see Perish Song. However, this one has Will-O-Wisp and is Timid Train, so it's actually fast as well. You got the Incineroar for to be partnering with this Gengar, which you normally see kind of drop the attack on certain Pokemon and then kind of parting shot out after the Gengar's done what it's wanted to do. Obviously, you're not clicking Perish Song on this, so it might be a Wisp or it might be something else. And then you have the Basculegion again, the Dragonite, King Gambit, which does pick up the Defiant version. There are Supreme Overlord versions running around, so that is something to just take into account. It is running Low Kick alongside the Dragonite as well, so they're going for double fighting coverage rather than going for Iron Head, which you can opt for on King Gambits, and some people do. And then you have the Mega Floette Calm Mind version with Dazzling Gleam and Moonblast. The one I would want to speak about the most is obviously the Basculegion. It is running Wave Crash. I prefer Liquidation and Waterfall on the Sash version. I don't like breaking my own Sash, so that's just something I would kind of account for. But obviously Basculegion is just such a good Pokemon. You're going to see it loads on loads of these teams alongside King Gambit. Those are two Pokemon that we'll pick up as we go through the kind of metas as well. There are replica codes on this one here. Sorry, that went to the other one. So you have got some replica codes for some of these teams. If the one thing I would point out here is, obviously I know everyone's kind of like on the Charizard Y hype on this tournament. Only 3 finished in the top 10, which would have qualified players for 2026. So potentially when we're earlier on and people were still experimenting with teams, there were still some quite strong teams. One of the strong teams that I will point out, and it does have a replica code for it, if you're wanting to test out Sand, this loads for us, there we go. This is definitely one of the stronger ones with the Mega Scovin and Mega T-Tar, Sand Rush, Extra Drill. The interesting one with the Sand Rush Extra Drill is running high horsepower over Earthquake, but I think that makes sense. You don't obviously want to burn your own Extra Drill when you click Earthquake, and also you've only got one ground immune Pokemon in Corviknight. I like the Corviknight, however I would say the Iron Head, nice tech, but I would almost argue that you want to have Roost, because if you're playing against other Corviknights, you're going to need to have the Roost to kind of outspeed it. And then with the Scarf Basculegion, I think that's kind of necessary on this team, especially being Jolly trained. If you're running Scarf Basculegion, you do need to be Jolly and not Adamant, because the majority of other Basculegions are going to run Jolly and you'll lose that fight in the end. You might as well play to a speed tie if you can. All of them hit 214 speed with max Jolly investment. And then you have the White Herb Sneasler. This one's Jolly, so it's a faster Sneasler, so that's something to take into account. We're seeing a lot of maybe Adamant Sneaslers that are on the bulkier end, or we're seeing fast Jolly Sneaslers that hit a certain speed tier to help out the team. I can understand kind of why here, because you've got Extra Drill that's fast, Sneasler and Basculegion are the fast ones, and then you've got like the Scoville and T-Tar and the Corviknight that are maybe a slower mode that kind of rely more on Corviknight setting up the tailwinds for it to do kind of being able to outspeed certain Pokemon. So that's something to obviously take into account for. But definitely, if you want to have a look at Sand, I would recommend doing this team. I've tested out a few times. It's quite solid on this one, so I do recommend looking at it. And it does have the replica code if you want to play it in Champions and not on Showdown as well. So that's available there for you to see the stats and everything there. What we'll move on to now is we'll move on to this tournament here, so the Malaysia Master Ball League. This one was before. I have them in the wrong order, apologies guys. So this one is the 103 player tournament. So yeah, so actually with this one you do see a little bit more Charizard in the tournament. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 of them in the top 10, which qualifies those players for 2026 Worlds. Congratulations to all the players who qualified, and also to the players who got the travel awards and the winner on that one. So with the winners team, unfortunately we don't have many rental codes here. I will point out some teams that might be something that you want to prepare for going into Indianapolis or into Turin. So with this one, you've got the winning team. Load. My internet is being a bit slow, sorry guys. But you do have the standard Mega Aerodactyl, and then the Floette. The Floette's the modest version with the Light of Ruin rather than the Carmine version that we saw previously. This one's quite interesting because the change up here is the Sneaser's got the sash, not the Basculegion. Basculegion's got the Cassipa Berry to survive those sucker punches from the King Gambits. It is running Wave Crash as well, but I don't mind that too much on the non-sash version because you're kind of then going for those boosted damages. That kind of makes sense in that part. And then with the Sneasler, you do have Close Combat, Diaclaw, Fake Out, Protect. That's pretty standard. However, this one is trained on the Adamant nature with no Unburden on Poison Point instead. So you have an increased chance of any attack you hit getting poison damage. That's quite nice because obviously sometimes you're a few HP off of winning a game and potentially poison touch, would push that into that margin there for you. One thing that does start to show up is this Garchomp. Garchomps at the beginning were max speed Scarf, then we've had the Dragon Fang version with Scale Shot, and now we're kind of seeing that the Garchomps are going on a bulkier end with the Citrus Berry. This did pop up a little bit, but it wasn't as successful as the offensive one, and then it's kind of flipped. The offensive one's kind of dropped off, and then you're kind of getting more Scarf and more bulkier chomps. I would say you're seeing more Citrus Berry chomps than you are seeing the other two, but those two are still around. Garchomp's quite a flexible Pokemon, so depending on your team and your needs for the team, you could kind of build it out this way. Similar to how you kind of look at the Basculegion, King Gambit, Sneasler. Those four are appearing on a lot of teams, so you do need to have a plan into how to deal with these four, because they can be quite effective as a kind of group, and they can sometimes just, if they've got a bad matchup with their Mega, these four can kind of handle a lot of the things in the meta as well. As I mentioned, obviously there's only one replica team from our winner. Congratulations to them for winning. What I'll show as well is obviously this Charizard team. This is coming a little bit more standard. So I say it's standard, it's the first version. This one's running Calm Mind, not the Light of Ruin, so that's something interesting to take into account. But you do have a bit of protection with the Sneasler, so that's kind of probably the reason why. Charizard, again, modest, not jolly. This tends to be a trend, not jolly, timid, sorry. This tends to be a trend where they focus around bulk and hitting harder than they do to tend to outspeed other Pokemon on that one. Then you have the King Gambit, again running low kick, so you do get the options around King Gambit. If you need Iron Heads, you could opt for Iron Heads rather than the low kick coverage, but a lot of people like having the low kick coverage for the opposing King Gambit because King Gambit is on a lot of the teams. And then we have a really interesting tech move on our Garchomp with the Citrus Berry. They have sub over the Rock Slide. It's quite an interesting one. I don't know how that kind of played out for them, because I kind of like the idea of double Rock Slide. And also with the Aerodactyl, they actually dropped the dual Wing Beat for the Wide Guard. Similar to Ragav's team, they kind of opted for these kind of changes. Garchomp obviously was very different on Ragav's team from the Grand Champions Festival, but it's a very interesting team to have a look at and maybe something to keep an eye on. This team can be quite flexible in terms of what players do with the 6 and how they decide to train them and what moves they have on them as well. Two teams I'd like to point out with this, and something that I would consider prepping for. You've got this Rain team. I've seen pick up a little bit. The only thing I would mention with this Rain team is the Choppleberry Archaludon. It makes it very difficult to remove with your Sneasler. Kind of naturally, sometimes you go in with this. And also Pelipper's are tending to trend with no Protect, but a Citrus Berry and Beak a bulkier version rather than the Sash. And on this version, sometimes the Sash has been moved to the Sneasler, so it can run Rain Dance over Protect. I've seen that a couple of times. People have started to drop that and go back to a kind of more standard set. And then you have the Scizor, which is a really nice meta cool alongside the Dragonite. The Dragonite on this team has got Thunderbolt, not Tailwind. That's something to consider as well. You have started seeing Dragonites pick up like Inner Focus Tailwind, so that's something just important. Don't presume because you're facing a Dragonite it's multi-scale. Read the team sheet, make sure you get that information to ensure that. This team, other than Basket Legion, is all trained in an offensive nature as well, but again, it's a flexible 6, but it's something to maybe prepare for going into tournaments that you might be playing, your locals or your regionals that you're going to attend this season. The other team, which I think's quite cool, is the Gengar team here. Which is the Kelch, I believe it's similar to the Kelch team. Yeah, you've got the Scarf Chomp like we spoke about, that's picked up. However, this one doesn't run a dragon move, it's got the Rock Tomb, and then you do have the Perish Song Gengar with the Protect, Incineroar, Ninetales with the Encore, which can be annoying. I believe on Kelch's version, to be fair, actually he ran Encore Disable on the Ninetales rather than Disable on the Gengar. Actually, he might have had it on the Gengar. I think he had Encore Disable. One player in the Grand Champions Festival had Encore Disable on like 2 of the Pokemon. So it kind of spread it in terms of speed tiers. And then you have Aegislash, which is quite a nice Pokemon into Sneasler. However, doesn't have the best matchup into other things like Garchomp and into King Gambit. You do sometimes see Aegislash running Focus Slash itself, so it can like live a hit, but that's often on like the Wide Guard sets, and they drop a King Shield for Wide Guard, so they're a bit more susceptible to attacks because they can't actually naturally protect against any attacks there. Going on to the next tournament in Singapore, which was held on the 23rd, so literally just this past weekend. Had around 100 players, played around 6 Swiss rounds again, single elimination into top 16, all matches best of 3, and then OTS including nature. So this is basically what we're expecting to be standard nowadays across all regions. This was a really cool tournament, and mainly because some of the meta calls players made. As I said, there's still a bit of experimentation going on, but there is a consistent outlier that Charizard Y feels like the best team, and you can basically play rock, paper, scissors kind of matchup into what you want to have the rest of the team do for that Charizard Y. However, congratulations to Zestimon, who won it with Mecha Glamora. Mega Glamora is a really cool kind of anti-meta Pokemon, especially into the Charizard. One thing it does do for you is it will KO the Charizard and KO the Aerodactyl. So you've actually got a really, really good position there. And the fact that also you have the Talonflame for priority Tailwind. We've sometimes seen Glamora paired with Whimsicott as well for that priority Tailwind, but often it's been Sash Glamora with the Whimsicott and it's been on a Charizard Y team, whereas this is kind of opted for, hey, we're going to go Talonflame, it's giving me that fire type. And then I'm going to go for Mega Glamora. Mega Glamora adaptability, timid. You're not worrying about the nature there. You're going for the speed boost. Adaptability is picking up the KOs that you want it to once you Mega it, because it's a solo Mega as well. You can kind of pick up these KOs. This was originally made by Casti, the Spanish player. He played it in a Victory Road tournament. However, there are a few different sets. I think it was Scarf, Ninetales. So Desdemon has made some changes for potentially some things that he spotted that he wanted on the teams. Encore's a nice touch always on the Ninetales. Encore's just an annoying thing that you have to respect on Team Sheet, alongside the Will-O-Wisp as well. So it's kind of like a very good kind of solid team. You would kind of expect with a Ninetales you Aurora Veil, but it's not something that the team needs in that regard. You've got your King Gambit with a fighting move. I think if you don't have another fighting move Pokemon on your team, then King Gambit needs to run that low kick, or you're going to lose out to opposing King Gambits. And then the interesting one here is they went for a Lumberry Garchomp with a Sword Stance, Earthquake, and Dragon Claw set rather than go for the Rock Slides. It's interesting because it's Jolly, so it will outspeed other Garchomps, which makes sense. And if you get it to +2 or even +1 after an Intimidate, the Dragon Claw is probably doing quite significant damage. I think it's probably a KO on most Garchomps that aren't running a Habana Berry, which is the Dragon Resist Berry. So that's quite an interesting meta call to kind of go for. And then obviously +2 Earthquakes is doing insane damage to anything that's not basically a Levitate or Flying type mon, which this team has in 2 Pokemon with Rotom and Talonflame. Quickly on the Rotom, it's running Magnet and not something like Citrus Berry or Leftovers, which you would normally expect. So the T-Bolts are probably doing quite significant damage, and it doesn't have a pivoting move there. So that's quite interesting to see. Really cool team built by Casti originally and then kind of designed for this tournament by Zestimon. Congratulations for them winning. Great team to see. Really nice to see an anti-meta team as well to kind of say, hey, I'm going to beat these Charizards and Aerodactyls up, which is the next team we're going to talk about. This team became very popular as like the second iteration of the Charizard teams. We had the Charizard Floette teams. This now has gone from Charizard Y to Mega Aerodactyl. Mega Aerodactyl has picked up quite a lot. The interesting one on these teams is that you've actually got Ironhead on the King Gambit, which fair enough. I mean, you've got the Fairy type coverage and the Fire type coverage and ground coverage into opposing King Gambit, so you should hopefully have enough to deal with the opposing King Gambits. So you don't really need the fighting coverage, and the Ironhead should have that coverage there. This one's interesting. They went with Garchomp, but they didn't go Rock Slide. They went Rock Tomb, but on an Adamant one. So I'm kind of interested to know what interactions kind of that allows it to hit, because also at the same time your Charizard's not timid, it's modest again. The whole team basically, other than Aerodactyl, is running a offensive boosting nature rather than a speed boosting nature. Again, you've got the Sash Basker Legion with Liquidation, Aqua Jet, and Last Respects. You've always got to have Aqua Jet, you've always got to have Last Respects. It's just a choice move on your water, your main water attack, depending on your item. As I mentioned, I always prefer Waterfall or Liquidation if you're running the Sash version, just so you're not breaking your own Sash with Wave Crash. So that's just something to consider. And then we have the Fairy Feather Sylveon, which has done incredibly well since Freddy basically won the Grand Challenge with the Sylveon. It was the Sylveon Eridos. So Eridos, that's kind of a wild team. If you want to check that out, there is definitely a rental online for that team, but maybe not a team that you might take to a tournament. I think you could do, but you would have to figure out when to bring the Eridos on that team. The other teams down here, obviously, as I mentioned, you do start seeing Charizard pick up a little bit. There are, like, depending on regions as well, we do see different teams pick up. So we do have 2 Megasco villains and a Dragonite team on the Rain team. That's something to consider as well. And then you have like a Mega Heracross, which is really cool, and a Mega Lucario, which again is quite cool on that one. I can imagine that's kind of similar to like the Mega Scizor, plus you get adaptability boosted close combats to pick up the King Gambits, and you can't get intimidated from inner focus into adaptability, so that's quite cool. And you have a Trick Room kind of Tail Room mode with that team as well, so that's another cool thing there. Again, point out the team that finished seconds there, but also the updated version, or what I would say the updated version is, of the Charizard. They re-put on the Mega Floette on these teams, and then you have the Whimsicott Glim set up, so that's kind of interesting to see. Usually then the Basculegion gets like a Citrus Berry, a Cassib Berry, or Mystic Water, because the sash usually goes to the Glamora on this team, and then that kind of works it that way there. Moving on to our final, actually we've missed the tournament, no we haven't, there we go, Victory Road. This was one I really wanted to cover because it was quite a cool team, and it actually features another non-Charizard team winning. Obviously, congratulations to Kyle Livinghouse winning the Victory Road tournament. This was the 4th iteration of it. This month we've had loads of Victory Roads. Didn't want to go over all of them, but I wanted to go over this one in kind of far away on this. The really cool one is first and second being Cleavor. I think everyone's spoken about it. Unfortunately, we don't have any replica codes for this. This kind of picked up, so if you look at the team, like other than the Megas, the two teams that finished first and second were basically the same. You just had Frostlass and Mega Charizard. So it's quite a cool team. The difference in these teams is here, obviously the Mega Frostlass being there. You've got the Swords Dance Black Glasses, that's kind of picked up a little bit, and also the Cobra Berry Whimsicott to kind of live the dual wing beats. Alongside, you've got the standard Sneasel, so you've got the standard Whitehead Unburdened version. This is a very standard Frostlass set. A lot of them run Blizzards, Shadow Ball, Aurora Veil. There are some that run Sub and Nasty Plot, but that's lower down, like you wouldn't see that too much. The really nice tech for this Cleavor is the Stone Axe. Obviously, Stone Axe is 90% accurate, but when you hit and connect, it lays rocks down on the field, so that's quite nice for if, like, let's say normally the Charizard Y teams tend to try and deal with your rock type. If you have that, then let's say we get rocks down on the first turn, then when that Charizard eventually enters the field, it will take a certain amount of chip damage from the rocks being on the field, and then you might have, let's say, the Basculegion or the Frostlass in a good position to kind of do enough damage to it to KO it in that way. So that's quite a nice kind of tech to have on the team. The other nice tech on this one, because it's the focus sash, you've got close combat, so double fighting coverage again, which is quite nice. You could have X Scissor if you're struggling against Farigiraf as well. That's something to consider, because you do have sharpness boosted cutting moves, but the nice one here is the feint. The feint is quite cool. You kind of threaten, let's say, them double protecting, you can feint and maybe encore them into the protect, or you can encore, you can CC them because they're scared of the fake out. So there's quite a lot of like plays you could make with that feint. It's obviously Jolly Nature. I think Jolly Nature Cleavor hits 150 if I'm correct, so it's not the fastest Pokemon, so Sash is definitely the best because it's also the bulkiest on that one as well. Obviously, we're going to look at the other Cleavor team. This is a little bit of a different Cleavor team. The thing I would point out here is that they both opted for Black Glasses. However, Kyle opted for Swords Dance over the Iron Head, which is quite interesting. But both Cleavors running Stone Axe Close Combat. However, this one is Choice Scarf, so it is running U-Turn and Rock Slide. So you can actually remove this Cleavor off the field quite nicely. And then you've got Rock Slide for spread coverage damage as well if you need to hit both targets. The sash is on the Whimsicott this time round, very standard set in Moonblast, Tailwind, Encore and Protect. That's something you're seeing a little bit more often. With this one, they always run Timid Max Speed. And then you've got your standard Sneasel set. standard Charizard set, again trained in modest nature on the bulkier side, probably kind of presuming that. And then you've got your King Gambit with the black glasses again. So they're kind of dropping the Chople Berry and going, okay, we're just going for max damage, which is potentially a good move because you're saying, hey, everybody's trained in this bulky kind of sense. Sneezers aren't looking to pick them up, so I've now got this powerful Sucker Punch. If I can get an attack into the Sneezer, follow it up with that Black Glasses Sucker Punch, that thing's off the field and I remove the threat. You're also KOing most Basculegions who are now knowing that they can live a Chople Berry, King Gambit, Sucker Punch, but now the Black Glasses are starting to pick them up because they're not training to be defensively bulky. And then you've got the Mystic Water Basculegion with the Wave Crash, so you're looking for that additional damage. Obviously, as I mentioned, because the Sash is taken here, you've got the Mystic Water, you do have the Seed Berry, and you do have the Citrus Berry that you could run on your Basculegion because of this. But this is really a good team from Han, and his brother Kevin finished third. Very different team, more standard kind of Charizard White and Mega Aerodactyl team, but it's cool seeing the two brothers finish second and third. It would have been kind of crazy if that was the finals, but yeah, definitely very crazy that they both finished there. In regard to other teams to potentially have a look at, obviously I've already pointed out the Donald Smith team earlier on with the T-Tar Extra. That's definitely a sand team. If you want to have a look at sand, that's quite good. If you want to have a look at a different snow team, this is a Frostlass team without the Garchomp. So instead of the Garchomp, you've got the Arcanine with the Rock Head, not the Intimidate, so you don't proc King Gambit or the Unburden on Sneasel. That's quite important because then that can mean the game gets out of hand quite quickly. Because this Sash has gone across to the Arcanine, the Basculegion picks up the Choice Scarf, and the Whimsicott on this one actually opts for the Fairy Feather for boosted Moonblast, and it goes bold nature, so it's bulkier to live those hits. And again, you've got low kick on the King Gambit, so you've got double fighting coverage again. The nice thing with the Arcanine is steel types become less of an issue for the Frostlass because the Arcanine with Rockhead isn't taking back recoil damage on the Head Smash and Flare Blitz, so you can basically hit them with a powerful Flare Blitz, get rid of, like, let's say the Sizzles, which are really annoying with Bullet Punches, or the Iron Head King Gambits, and then kind of play from there with your Frostlass quite freely, which is quite nice for the Frostlass. So that's quite a good kind of tech move. Normally it's Garchomp in this spot, but Garchomp doesn't always answer into those steel types, especially like Mega Sizzle is a little bit difficult to remove with those teams that don't have a fire type on the team. Another one to point out is not a Mega that we see often, is this Mega Garchomp team. It's on a like more standard kind of fire sun team with Mega Charizard Y, but it does have like a Trick Room mode alongside Charcoal Incineroar. So I imagine that's for certain calcs. I can imagine like Flare Blitz plus, I think it was Flare Blitz plus Psychic, they said, in the sun picks up Charizard Y, so that's quite cool. So if you get into that Trick Room mode with the sun set up on it against opposing teams, you can pick up their Charizard. Sylveon again as well, and then you got Garchomp. Garchomp again, an adamant version that's running Rock Tomb. I'm not sure again of the speed interactions. I'm guessing the Rock Tomb is to outspeed certain Pokemon for the modest Charizard. So you're kind of potentially got like this speed order of like Chomp going first, hits the Rock Tomb, and then Charizard can go for the second hit. That's something to potentially consider if you're building out this team. You can obviously run double Rock Slide, or you can run Rock Tomb. Potentially another idea behind the Rock Tomb is so you can hit those Aerodactyls, slow them down, and then potentially the Charizards being able to hit those Mega Aerodactyls without having to worry about the Rock Slides as well. So that's something to consider when building your Garchomp. Obviously this is a Mega Garchomp, so that's quite an interesting one. Mega Garchomp's attack stat is kind of ridiculous as well. And then another team to point out that we don't see too often, but we see Mega Delphox and a Mega Floette, which is quite a cool team. Both of them have like a a status move that's quite cool to use. So you got substitute, meaning that you can protect yourself for one turn behind the sucker punches, so you can kind of substitute, get the heat wave off, and then they break the sub, and then you've kind of got another turn where you can set up the sub again, or you can play around it in a different way. And then you've got the Calm Mind Draining Kiss set. Calm Mind Draining Kiss with Fairy Aura or modest version is like no joke, and you've got double Fake Out plus Sinister for redirection to protect. And then the Basket Legion again, just kind of like as an end game sweeper, an early game sweeper to kind of do damage down. Usually you do see Basket Legion kind of positioned for the end game though on those ones. The one thing I will say is obviously in the top 8 you only see one Incineroar, which is kind of saying one of the best Pokemon in VGC just isn't that good at the moment. But if you look, you've got so much kind of hate towards Incineroar with the Sneasel and King Gambits. As I mentioned, you can see Supreme Overlord King Gambits, but I would still keep, oh no, sorry, not one Incineroar, yeah, one Incineroar. But Defiant's still very good because there are a lot of moves that can drop status onto the King Gambit, so if you can call that, you can get a nice switch onto those ones as well. And then the final tournament that we'll talk about here is the PTC, if you've heard it, or the Pokemon Trainers Cup. It's the South Korea big tournament. Effectively happened this weekend as well, so we did have a lot of tournaments in May, so this potentially is gonna like change the meta quite heavily before these regionals. Mega Charizard Floette did win, however it was with a kind of a little bit of a different version with a Sinister and a Incin, so Incin comes back into the fold here, but you was playing against a really cool team in kind of Sizzle, Floette, Glamora, King Gambit, Talonflame and Garchomp. The other team opting not to have a Tailwind setter, potentially them using the Trick Room. You have Trick Room on this. No, yeah, it does. It does have Protect, Machigacha, Rage Powder, Trick Room. So it's kind of using that. And this is the Sash version of the Aegislash. I guess that's because they just want to kind of sit around. As I mentioned, Aegislash doesn't have a lot of things that kind of hate into it because of similar Pokemon of typing. This opting for the Scarf Garchomp. You've got the Calm Mind Flow again. Doesn't have Draining Kiss, however, has Dazzling Gleam plus Moonblast. So you're trying to boost up those powerful Moonblasts and Dazzling Gleams for their spread damage, alongside a Citrus Berry Incineroar. And then you've got the all-powerful Charizard Y again. So Charizard Y is definitely something to prep into if you haven't. There's a lot of different versions, but if you are trying to prep into Charizard Y, potentially consider about the latest version that's had the most success, so like the Cleavor version or the Glamora version, and then maybe work towards the Sylveon version and the Floette version that won the Grand Champions Festival as well, to try and prep yourself for those teams. Those would definitely be teams I would recommend prepping for, and having a game plan going into them if you are going to a tournament. The really cool one is Sajin Park's team. I've done a duplicate team for it, so if you want to play it, it's this team. It's got some really cool tech. Obviously, you've got the Scarfavilion, which I really hate playing against because you have to have something that can outspeed it and stop it and hit it as well. The Mouse Hold is even further annoying because it will protect Pokemon that should kind of drop down. On this one, you do have double setup with the Calm Mind Floette and the Nasty Plot on the Delphox, and you've got Tailwind on the Vivillon, so if you do need to outspeed, the Scarfavilion is kind of useful there, alongside having Feint on the Mouse Hold, which is quite cool. So once you get set up, they can't really do too much to be like, oh yeah, I'm going to click Wide Guard. No, Feint, that breaks it. You've got the Heat Wave going in, you've got, let's say, the Machigacha going in. Machigacha also with the Sinister has the Life Dew, so the Feint and like Life Dew and all these things built up together really help out. Incineroar again, this is why I'm kind of saying, like, people are still playing Incineroar. Don't drop Defiant just because you don't see it too often. There is still a lot of Incineroar around. It's just not as, you don't see it as high usage as it normally is. It's still around, it's still a good Pokemon, it's still kind of after Charizard, the Pokemon that people look to be a fire type on that team. So it's definitely something to consider when building out your team on that one. But yeah, as I mentioned, Victory Road has got all the replica codes for these pastes, so if you wanted to check them out, definitely go and check these teams out. And there's the replica codes on the sides of each of these tournaments as well, so if you wanted to play some of them, definitely go and play some of them. Unfortunately, we don't have EVs for some of these teams, so it's not something that I can provide on this video before that. But if you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. Let me know down below what you think is going to win Indianapolis and Turin. Charizard Y is definitely up there, but give me a mythical other Pokemon that you think is going to do extremely well at a tournament that maybe not is Charizard Y. And we will see you in the next video. Have a good day.